Hey, are you new to setting boundaries and think that maybe you might be doing it wrong? Let's talk about it. Hey there, I'm Javonna MaeRhys, your go to self care coach, and I help busy women like you get real about self care through boundaries, mindfulness, and a whole lot of self love. Here on this channel, we talk about how to live a softer, more joyful life. And if that sounds good to you, then you might want to sign up for my free email course, Master Your Boundaries in 7 Days. Each day, you will receive a short, practical tip to help you say no confidently and yes to what really matters. When I first started setting boundaries, I thought I was doing everything right. And I realize now that a lot of times I made things worse. And so today I'm going to share the top 5 mistakes to avoid when you first start setting your boundaries. If you keep making these mistakes, then your boundaries are going to crumble and you are going to feel stressed and overwhelmed and resentful. By recognizing these mistakes and avoiding them, you're going to teach people how to treat you, ensuring that they respect you, your time, and your energy. So let's jump right into mistake number 1, which is being too vague. So you don't want to be so vague that you're not clear about your boundaries. So instead of just saying, I'm busy, you might want to say that I'm already committed to other plans. Right. And so, what that's going to do is it's a fine line, and we're going to talk about it in the next mistake to avoid. In fact, let's just go ahead and talk about the next mistake. The next mistake is to avoid over explaining, which I talked about in my last video, the first 5 steps, or how to start setting your boundaries, 5 things you need to pay attention to, which I'll link to in the description. And so it's a fine line, right? Because if you are too vague and the person knows you or they don't have good boundaries, they're going to start asking you questions, right? But if you over explain, you're also inviting questions and you're giving the idea that you feel like you have to explain. And consciously or subconsciously, that's going to make some people feel like they have the right to push on those boundaries, right? And so you can say, I'm not available at that time. And I feel like that's enough for a reasonable person not to start asking a bunch of questions. But if it's too short, I know that no is a complete sentence, but if you want to maintain a relationship, like if you have a friend or if you have, work, you got to keep going to work to get your paycheck. So if you want to maintain relationships, then there's a middle ground between just saying no or I'm busy and then word vomiting all of these things because you feel guilty for saying no in the first place. And that's going to take some practice. One of the things I talked about in the previous video is that setting boundaries is not a one and done. It's something that you're going to have to practice again and again. And this is part of that practicing, is to figure out what feels good and right for you, because it's going to be different for everyone. And the only way to figure out what's going to work is for you to try it. So moving on to the third mistake that you want to avoid setting boundaries in anger. Now, let me say, if someone is, violently, coming into your space, then that goes out the window. You need to tell people to stop and move around or whatever you need to do for your own physical or mental safety. But I'm talking about in a normal situation, if somebody says something that maybe they came at you sideways, they said something with a tone that you did not like, maybe don't jump on that immediately. Maybe take some time to approach that calmly and rationally. I know that if somebody said something to me when I was at work where they came at me sideways and I was like, I don't like the way you said that to me. I would, in that conversation as quickly as possible, to give both of us time to reflect, calm down, and I don't have any control of how the other person processes a situation. I only have control over how I process the situation. And so I would give that person time away and then myself time away. And then I would circle back and I would put down a boundary that essentially is, you don't speak to me in that fashion, or whatever it was that had gone wrong. I let them know that in future conversations, this is how we're going to talk to each other. And that boundary may be different, in different situations. That's just one example. But when someone does something that, makes you a little bit angry, it can take some practice, especially if you're kind of a hothead, to step back and not put yourself in a predicament that's going to keep you from, I don't know, from opportunities or make things super awkward. And again, this is going to be something that is based on your tolerance and what you're trying to do in whatever the situation is, right? So it's going to be different at work than it is with a family member, than it is with a friend, than it is with a stranger, right? And so that's something that you have to take into account. But I do think that it's always good to step back and reflect when we are angry, because I have talked on this channel before about the anger iceberg. And a lot of times when we are angry, that's just the tip of the iceberg, and there's something else underneath it. Maybe we feel disrespected. Maybe we feel, someone made us feel ashamed about something. And so stepping away when we are angry allows us to be better in touch with our own feelings, which is a powerful thing for us to do, is to be in touch with those feelings, especially if we have been suppressing those feelings because we've got to, again, people please and be happy all the time and not cause a problem. It's good for us to get in touch with what our feelings actually are, if that's the way that we've been living. And so moving on to the fourth thing that you want to avoid not following through. Okay. So when you set a boundary, you've got to enforce them. And so if you say that, and this is with your kids as well. If you have a boundary with your kids, and you are not keeping it, those of you who are parents, they are going to push those boundaries and go right on through if you are not maintaining them, if you're not enforcing them. And that's true of everyone. When you don't enforce the boundaries, if you don't follow through, you're telling people that you are not serious about those boundaries. And, I'm just going to ask this person, I'm just going to do what I want to do because they're not serious about this boundary. And so you have to make sure that you're following through with the boundary. And this is not a one and done. You will probably have to do this more than once. And that's good. That's good because it builds your muscle of being able to enforce your boundaries, to really implement those boundaries and not just pay them lip service, to do the hard work of enforcing them. And it shows that you can do that, and the relationships that you have, the ones worth keeping, are not going to crumble because those people respect you enough to respect your boundaries. So it's good for you to flex the muscle, and it's also good because it teaches the other people how to treat you and that you are serious about these boundaries. Now, the fifth mistake that you want to avoid is you want to avoid apologizing. This is for my people pleasers. This is for my people who don't like to make anyone mad, who want to keep everything nice and happy. Don't apologize for your boundaries, because this is just one more thing that makes people think that your boundaries are negotiable. If you're apologizing for them, especially if it's someone who doesn't necessarily have your best interest at heart, they just want you to do something for them, right? It can make it seem like, she feels bad. I think maybe If I push a little bit more, she'll do what I'm asking her to do. And you don't owe anyone an apology. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you prioritizing yourself, with you prioritizing your needs. So there's no need to apologize for that. Now, if you've been finding this helpful, please make sure that you like, share, subscribe, share with somebody else who needs to work on their boundaries. Maybe they are making some of these mistakes that we've been talking about. When you share, when you comment, it really helps my channel, and I really appreciate it. So thanks to you guys who have been commenting and sending me messages. So, also, let's talk about what to do if you are constantly struggling with these boundaries. I mentioned this earlier in the video, but I'm going to mention it again. I do have a free email course called Master the Art of Boundaries in 7 Days, and the link is in the description, and it's going to give you practical tips all of those 7 days that you can use to start saying no in a way that works for you, especially in those difficult relationships, because setting boundaries with some people is easier than others. And we'll talk about that more in this series. But for immediate help, go ahead and sign up for that free email course, and you'll get a tip to your inbox every day. So if you like this video, keep watching, because I have some more videos in this series. I've received some feedback about different types of boundaries that you guys need help with. And so I am making some videos to help out with that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.